Commander Zethkalar adjusted his breathing mask as the transport ship descended toward Kepler 442. The mining colony looked like a small dot on the planet's surface, surrounded by deep holes and metal towers. His orders were simple: stop the fighting between the human miners and the corporate security forces. It should have been easy work for someone with his experience the Vaxian Republic had sent him, because he was good at solving problems without too much violence. In his 40 years of service, he had handled dozens of colonial disputes. Most species saw his 4 arms and gray skin and decided to listen to reason. Humans, he had heard, were supposed to be simple creatures who would back down when faced with superior force. The transport landed near the main mining facility. Zethkalar could see the damage already: burned vehicles, broken windows, and holes in the walls where explosives had gone off. The corporate security forces had set up a perimeter around the colony, but they looked nervous. Their leader, a tall alien with blue skin, walked over to meet him. "Commander, thank you for coming," the security chief said. "These humans are more trouble than we expected. They should have surrendered days ago, but they keep fighting." Zethkalar looked at the colony through his binoculars. "How many humans are inside?" "About 300 miners and their families. Our intelligence says they have maybe 50 people who can fight. We have 200 trained security officers and better weapons." "Then why haven't you taken the colony?" The security chief looked uncomfortable. "They keep doing things we don't expect. Yesterday they turned their mining equipment into weapons. Today they blew up one of our vehicles using something they made from kitchen supplies." Zethkalar frowned. This was unusual behavior. Most species fought in predictable ways. They used their weapons, followed basic tactics, and surrendered when they were outnumbered. "I want to speak with their leaders." An hour later, Zethkalar stood at the colony's main gate. The humans had built barricades from mining equipment and scrap metal. He could see armed figures moving behind the barriers, but they stayed hidden. A voice called out from behind the barricades. "State your business. I am Commander Zethkalar of the Vaxian Republic. I'm here to negotiate a peaceful solution to this conflict." A woman stepped out from behind the barricades. She was tall for a human, with short brown hair and steady eyes. She carried a weapon that looked like it had been made from mining tools. "I'm Lisa Carter, colony engineer." "This is Jake Morrison, our mining supervisor," a man joined her. He was older, with gray hair and scarred hands. He also carried a makeshift weapon. Zethkalar studied them both. They looked tired but determined. Most importantly, they didn't look afraid. "The corporate security forces have legal authority to remove you from this colony," Zethkalar said. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and no one else needs to get hurt." Lisa Carter smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Commander, with respect, we're not going anywhere. This is our home. We've worked these mines for 5 years, and we're not giving them up to some corporation that wants to replace us with machines." "You cannot win this fight," Zethkalar said. "They have better weapons and more soldiers." Jake Morrison stepped forward. "Maybe, but we know this place better than they do. We built it, we work it, and we know how to use it." "Use it how?" "Lisa." Carter's smile grew wider. "You'll see." The attack came at dawn the next day. Zethkalar watched from the command post as the security forces advanced on the colony. They moved in formation, using their superior numbers to surround the human positions. Everything went according to plan for the first 10 minutes. Then the humans started fighting back. The first surprise came when the security forces reached the outer buildings. The humans had rigged the structures with explosives, but not to destroy them. Instead, the explosions created clouds of mining dust that blocked vision and made it hard to breathe. The security forces stumbled around blind while the humans picked them off with their improvised weapons. The second surprise came when the humans started using their mining equipment as weapons. Zethkalar watched in amazement as they turned industrial drills into assault tools and used mining charges to create tactical explosions. A group of humans led by Jake Morrison used a massive excavator to push a pile of rocks into a perfect defensive position. But the biggest surprise came. From Lisa Carter, she had spent the night rigging the main mining shaft with explosives. When the security forces tried to use it as a route to attack the colony's center, she triggered the charges. The explosion didn't just block the shaft. It changed the entire layout of the battlefield, creating new cover for the humans in cutting. Off the security forces' retreat route, Zethkalar realized he was watching something he had never seen before. The humans weren't just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with ideas. They were changing the battlefield itself to give themselves an advantage. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, the security forces had retreated to their ships. They had lost 30 soldiers and most of their equipment. The humans had lost 12 people, but they still controlled the colony. Zethkalar requested permission to speak with the human leaders again. This time, he met them in the colony's main hall. The humans looked exhausted but proud. Children played in the corners while adults worked on repairing damaged equipment. "You fought well," Zethkalar said. "But this isn't over. The corporation will send more soldiers." "Then we'll fight them too," Lisa Carter said. "This is our home." "Why?" Zethkalar asked. "Why not just find another place to live? Why fight so hard for a few mines?" Jake Morrison looked at him with tired eyes. "Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up for ourselves, who will? Because this is where we belong." Zethkalar left the colony that evening with a new understanding. The humans weren't just fighting for money or territory. They were fighting for something. Deeper, they were fighting for the right to exist on their own terms. And they were willing to change the rules of war itself to win that fight. In his report to the Vaxian Republic, Zethkalar wrote, "The humans are not like other species. They do not fight in predictable ways. They adapt their environment to serve their needs. They turn disadvantages into advantages. They refuse to surrender even when logic demands it. Any future conflicts involving humans should be planned accordingly." But even as he wrote those words, Zethkalar knew he hadn't captured the full truth. The humans had done something that still gave him chills when he thought about it. They had made him believe for just a moment that impossible things might be possible after all. 4 years after the Kepler Station incident, Commander Zethkalar found himself on a transport ship heading toward the Tau Ceti system. The Centauri rebellion had spread across 3 star systems, and his superiors wanted him to serve as a military advisor. His job was to help end the conflict quickly and with minimal casualties. The rebellion had started when several human colonies refused to accept new trade agreements. The Galactic Commerce Authority had responded by sending enforcement fleets to blockade the rebellious worlds. Most colonies had surrendered within weeks, but New Sarajevo was different. The human colony had been under siege for 4 months and showed no signs of giving up. Single quotes. KALAR studied the reports during the journey. New Sarajevo was an agricultural colony with a population of 8,000 humans. They had no military fleet, no advanced weapons, and limited supplies. The blockade fleet had cut off all supply routes and communication with the outside galaxy. By all logical calculations, the humans should have surrendered months ago. The fleet commander, Admiral Korvash, met Zethkalar when his transport docked with the flagship. Korvash was a veteran officer from the Draknari Empire, known for his efficient handling of colonial disputes. "Commander, I'm glad you're here," Korvash said. "These humans are proving more stubborn than expected. We've been broadcasting surrender terms for 4 months, but they refuse to respond. What's their situation on the ground?" "Bad and getting worse. Our scans show their food supplies should have run out weeks ago. Their power grid is failing and winter is coming to their planet. They have children in that colony. Any reasonable species would have surrendered by now." Zethkalar looked at the tactical display showing New Sarajevo. The colony was built in a valley surrounded by mountains with a small city center and farms, spreading out in all directions. "Have you tried direct communication?" "Every day. Their mayor, Ben Rodriguez, keeps saying the same thing. We'll talk when you lift the blockade. He won't even discuss terms. What about their military situation?" "They have maybe 300 people who can fight, led by someone called Captain Amy Foster. She used to be in the human military before she moved to the colony. The rest are farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers. They shouldn't be able to hold out much longer. Zethkalar requested permission to observe the colony directly. The next day, he joined a reconnaissance flight over New Sarajevo. What he saw from the air looked like a dying settlement. Smoke rose from only a few buildings, suggesting power shortages. The streets were mostly empty. The farm showed signs of neglect, but something bothered him. The humans had positioned defensive barriers at key points around the colony. The barriers looked new, not like something built months ago. And despite the apparent decay, he could see people moving with purpose between buildings. "Admiral, I want to try something different," Zethkalar said when they returned to the flagship. "Let me send the communication directly to their leaders. We've tried that hundreds of times. Not like this. I want to speak to them as someone who has fought alongside humans before." Admiral Korvash agreed, though he looked skeptical. An hour later, Zethkalar sat in the communications room, speaking directly to the new Sarajevo leadership. Mayor Ben Rodriguez appeared on the screen. He was a middle-aged human with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Despite the siege, he looked healthy and alert. "Commander Zethkalar, I know who you are. You were at Kepler Station. I was. I saw how your people fought there. Then you know we don't give up easily. I also know you're not stupid. Your colony is dying. Your people are suffering. End this now, and we can arrange reasonable terms." Ben Rodriguez smiled. "Commander, let me show you something." The screen changed to show the interior of what looked like a large underground facility. Humans were working at various tasks. Some were tending plants in hydroponic gardens. Others were operating machinery. Children were playing in a corner while adults supervised them. "This is level 3 of our emergency shelter system," Rodriguez said. "We have 7 levels, each one designed to support our entire population for months. We started building this system the day we declared independence." Zethkalar stared at the screen. "You've been preparing for a siege." "We've been preparing for war. We knew the Commerce Authority wouldn't let us leave quietly, so we got ready." The screen changed again, showing a woman in military uniform. She had short blonde hair and carried herself like a professional soldier. "I'm Captain Amy Foster. I wanted you to understand our situation clearly. We're not starving. We're not dying. We're waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you to get tired of sitting out there and go home." Over the next 2 months, Zethkalar watched the siege continue. The humans had indeed prepared for a long conflict. They had built extensive underground facilities, stockpiled supplies, and developed ways to produce food and power even under blockade conditions. But what impressed him most was how they maintained their morale. Despite being cut off from the galaxy, despite facing a superior enemy force, the humans continued to live their lives. They held classes for their children, celebrated birthdays, and even organized entertainment events. The real test came when winter arrived. The temperature on New Sarajevo dropped to dangerous levels and the humans' power grid began failing. Admiral Korvash was convinced this would finally break their resistance. Instead, the humans adapted again. Zethkalar watched the colony's thermal signatures through reconnaissance drones. The humans had moved most of their population deeper underground, where the temperature was more stable. They had also begun using waste heat from their manufacturing facilities to warm their living spaces. When their food supplies ran low, they didn't panic. Engineer Tony Mitchell and Dr. Helen Park worked together to develop new ways to produce nutrition from available materials. They processed organic waste into edible supplements, grew mushrooms in dark spaces, and even found ways to extract proteins from processed clothing fibers. "They're eating their own clothes," Admiral Korvash said in disbelief, "and they're still fighting." The moment that changed everything happened on day 168 of the siege. A group of young humans, led by 19-year-old Steve Harrison, attempted to break through the blockade using a modified cargo ship. The ship was old, barely armed, and had no chance against the fleet's warships. Zethkalar watched the battle from the flagship's bridge. The human ship moved with desperate courage, dodging weapons fire and trying to reach the hyperspace jump point. When the ship's engines failed, Steve Harrison sent a message to the fleet. "This is Steve Harrison of New Sarajevo. We're not running away. We're showing you that we'll never stop trying. Every day you keep us here, we get stronger. Every day you waste sitting in space, we're building something better down here. You can blockade us for years, but you can't break us." The cargo ship exploded a moment later, but the message had been sent. That night, Zethkalar sent his own message to the Galactic Commerce Authority. He recommended ending the siege immediately and negotiating a peaceful settlement. In his report, he wrote, "The humans are not weakening. They are adapting. They have turned this siege into a test of endurance, and they are winning. Every day we spend here makes them more confident and us more frustrated. They are not fighting to escape. They are fighting to prove they cannot be broken." 3 days later, the blockade was lifted. New Sarajevo became an independent colony, free to govern itself. But Zethkalar knew the real victory was something else entirely. The humans had shown the galaxy that they could survive anything, endure any hardship, and emerge stronger than before. As his transport ship left the Tau Ceti system, Zethkalar looked back at New Sarajevo one last time. The colony was already rebuilding, expanding, and preparing for whatever challenges might come next. The humans had not just survived the siege. They had used it to become something more than they were before. 3 years after the siege of New Sarajevo, Commander Zethkalar received orders that surprised him. The Galactic Trade Commission wanted him to join a special task force, investigating mysterious attacks on shipping lanes near the Sol system. What made this assignment unusual was that he would be working directly with human military forces. The attacks had been going on for 6 months. Cargo ships were disappearing without distress signals. The few survivors described being attacked by ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating force, then vanish into the asteroid belt. The attackers never demanded ransom or made political statements. They simply took what they wanted and disappeared. Zethkalar's transport docked with the used Defiance, a human battleship serving as the task force flagship. Admiral Kate Sullivan met him at the airlock. She was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her uniform was crisp and professional, but Zethkalar could see old scars on her hands that spoke of combat experience. "Commander, welcome aboard," Admiral Sullivan said. "I've read your reports from Kepler Station and New Sarajevo. Your insights into human behavior should be valuable for this operation." "Thank you, Admiral. Though I should point out that these attackers might not be human. Actually, we're pretty sure they are. Come, let me show you what we've learned." Admiral Sullivan led him to the ship's intelligence center, where holographic displays showed the attack patterns. The data was confusing. The Phantom ships used energy weapons that matched no known human technology, but their tactics were distinctly human in style. "The attackers are definitely human," said the intelligence officer, a young man named Lieutenant Chris Murphy. "We've analyzed their communication patterns and flight behavior, but their ships are the mystery. They're using technology that shouldn't exist." "What kind of technology?" "Energy shields that can deflect plasma cannons, weapon systems that punch through military-grade armor, engines that can accelerate faster than anything in our fleet. The problem is, humans don't have access to that kind of equipment." Admiral Sullivan pulled up another display. "This is where it gets interesting. 3 days ago, we found wreckage from one of their ships. The hull fragments show signs of multiple repairs using different types of metal. It's like they built their ships from scrap." "Scrap from what?" "That's what we're going to find out." The task force spent 2 weeks patrolling the shipping lanes, but the Phantom fleet stayed hidden. Then, on a routine patrol near the asteroid belt, sensors detected movement in a debris field left over from an old battle. Admiral Sullivan ordered the fleet to investigate. What they found changed everything. Hidden among the asteroids was a massive salvage operation. Dozens of ships, all of them clearly human-built, were working to strip useful materials from the wreckage of alien warships. The The ships were strange combinations of human and alien technology, welded together in ways that should not have worked. "This is Admiral Sullivan to all ships in the debris field," she broadcast. "You are engaged in illegal salvage operations. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." The response came from a ship that looked like it had been built from the parts of 3 different vessels. "This is Captain Ryan Brooks of the Free Traders Alliance. We're in open space, Admiral. No law against salvage work out here." "There is when you're attacking civilian shipping." "We're not attacking anyone. We're protecting our territory." The conversation was interrupted when sensors detected incoming ships. 6 vessels approached the task force, moving in formation. They looked like they had been assembled from spare parts, but they moved with the coordination of a professional military unit. "Admiral, this is Emma Torres, commander of the Free Traders Alliance. We need to talk." An hour later, Zethkalar found himself in the strangest negotiation of his career. The Free Traders had agreed to meet aboard the Defiance, but they had insisted on bringing their own security. The delegation was led by Emma Torres, a woman in her 40s with the weathered look of someone who had spent years in deep space. "We're not pirates," Emma Torres said. "We're refugees. 3 years ago, the Galactic Commerce Authority seized our trading licenses and confiscated our ships. They said human traders were undercutting alien businesses with unfair competition. So you turned to piracy?" "We turned to survival. We took our families and everything we could carry and came out here to the debris fields. We've been making a living salvaging what other species leave behind." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. "That doesn't explain the attacks on shipping." "What attacks?" "We've been defending ourselves against Commerce Authority raids. Every time they send enforcement ships to drive us out, we send them running. We never attack civilian shipping." Zethkalar studied the tactical displays. The pattern of attacks did match the locations where Commerce Authority ships had been operating. "Show me your ships," Emma Torres smiled. "Chris, take them on the tour." Chris Murphy turned out to be the same person as the intelligence officer from the Defiance, except this Chris Murphy was older, more experienced, and had been working with salvaged alien technology for 3 years. He led them through the makeshift fleet, explaining how they had learned to combine human engineering with alien components. "The trick is not to copy what the aliens did," Chris Murphy explained as they walked through a ship that had been built from the remains of a Draknari cruiser. "You have to understand what they were trying to accomplish, then figure out how to do it better. The ship they were touring should have been impossible. It combined human life support systems with alien weapons, human navigation computers with alien shields, and human crew quarters with alien engine technology. Every system had been modified, improved, or completely rebuilt." "How did you learn to do this?" Zethkalar asked. "Trial and error, lots of error. We lost 2 ships and 15 people learning how to make alien shield generators work with human power systems. But once we figured it out, we could build ships that were better than anything either species had designed alone." The tour continued through the salvage operation. Zethkalar watched human workers strip useful components from alien warships that had been destroyed in battles years ago. They were taking weapons, engines, computer systems, and even armor plating, then combining them with human technology to create something entirely new. "This is incredible," Admiral Sullivan said. "You've created an entire fleet from scrap metal." "Not scrap metal," Emma Torres corrected, "raw materials. The aliens who built these ships were good engineers, but they were conservative. They built things to last, not to be efficient. We build things to work." The demonstration came when a Commerce Authority patrol ship appeared at the edge of the debris field. The patrol ship was new, well-armed, and confident. It demanded that the salvage operation shut down immediately. "Watch this," Chris Murphy said. Captain Ryan Brooks launched in a ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. The vessel was half the size of the patrol ship and appeared to be held together with welding tape and prayer. But when the 2 ships engaged, the salvage vessel moved like a fighter craft, dodging weapons fire and striking with precision that seemed impossible. The patrol ship's shields failed after 2 hits. Its weapon systems went offline after 4. Within 10 minutes, the supposedly superior alien vessel was drifting helplessly while the human ship circled it like a predator. How? Admiral Sullivan asked. We know how their shields work because we've been taking them apart for 3 years, Chris Murphy said. We know where their weak spots are because we've been studying their weapons. Most importantly, we know how to push their technology past its design limits because we don't care about warranty periods. The patrol ship was escorted out of the debris field by 2 more salvage vessels. The Commerce Authority ship limped away, its crew probably wondering how they had been defeated by what looked like flying junk. The Commerce Authority has been sending ships to attack us for months, Emma Torres said. Every time they come, we send them home with their tails between their legs. They started calling us the Phantom Fleet because we seem to appear out of nowhere. But the shipping attacks? Commerce Authority ships trying to make us look like pirates. They attack civilian vessels, then blame us for the raids. It's an old trick. Zethkalar spent the next week with the free traders, learning about their operation. What he discovered was both impressive and terrifying. The humans had not just learned to use alien technology. They had learned to improve it, to push it beyond its original design parameters, to combine it in ways that created entirely new capabilities. We're not trying to copy anyone, Emma Torres explained. We're trying to survive. And survival means taking whatever resources you can find and turning them into something useful. When Zethkalar filed his report, he struggled to find words. For what he had witnessed, the free traders had created a fleet of warships from the discarded wreckage of alien battles. They had learned to combine technologies from different species in ways that made them more powerful than the sum of their parts. Most importantly, they had proven that humans could take any resource, no matter how unlikely, and turn it into a weapon of war. 1 year after the Phantom Fleet incident, Commander Zethkalar received his most dangerous assignment yet. Intelligence reports suggested that a major human resistance movement was operating on Mars, planning attacks against government installations throughout the Sol system. His mission was to infiltrate the resistance and gather information about their capabilities and plans. The assignment troubled him. After his experiences at Kepler Station, New Sarajevo, and the asteroid belt, Zethkalar had developed a healthy respect for human ingenuity. He knew that whatever he found on Mars would be more complex than his superiors expected. Mars had been under martial law for 2 years, following widespread protests against new colonial regulations. The human population had been restricted to designated zones, and their movements were closely monitored. On the surface, the planet appeared calm and controlled. Underground, according to intelligence reports, something very different was happening. Zethkalar arrived on Mars disguised as a trade representative from the Vaxion Republic. His cover story was that he was investigating opportunities for mining partnerships with the colonial government. In reality, he was looking for signs of the resistance movement. His first contact came through Paul Chun, a civil engineer who worked for the Colonial Transportation Authority. Paul was a quiet man in his 50s who had lived on Mars for 15 years. He had built most of the colony's infrastructure and knew every tunnel, pipe, and cable on the planet. You're interested in mining operations? Paul asked during their first meeting. Mars has some unique geological features that might interest you. What kind of features? Natural cave systems, underground water sources, mineral deposits that are easy to reach if you know where to look. The colonial government has maps, but they're not very detailed. The real information comes from people who've spent time exploring. Over the next week, Paul Chun showed Zethkalar around Mars. They visited mining sites, transportation hubs, and industrial facilities. But Zethkalar began to notice things that didn't match the official records. Tunnels that went deeper than they should, power consumption that was higher than expected, traffic patterns that suggested people were moving through areas that were supposed to be empty. Paul, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you part of the resistance? Paul Chun smiled. What resistance? We're just a bunch of engineers and miners trying to make a living. The intelligence reports say there's an organized movement planning attacks against the government. Intelligence reports say a lot of things. Would you like to see what we're actually doing? That night, Paul Chun led Zethkalar to what looked like a maintenance entrance in the colony's industrial district. They took an elevator down 3 levels, then walked through a service tunnel that stretched for several kilometers. The tunnel was well maintained and clearly saw regular use. Where are we going? To meet some friends. The service tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took Zethkalar's breath away. The space was enormous, easily large enough to hold several thousand people. It was filled with activity. Humans were working at various tasks, maintaining equipment, growing food in hydroponic gardens, and operating what looked like a complete manufacturing facility. "Welcome to New Underground," Paul Chun said. "We've been building this for 5 years." A woman approached them. She was tall and athletic, with short black hair and the bearing of a professional soldier. "I'm Nina Walker, formerly Captain Walker of the Mars Colonial Guard. Now I'm just another engineer." "This is incredible," Zethkalar said, looking around the chamber. "How did you build all this without the government knowing?" "Carefully, Nina," Walker said, and slowly. "We started with existing natural caves and expanded them using mining equipment. Every piece of material, every tool, every component was brought down here a little at a time over several years. But why? Because we saw what was coming. The colonial government was getting more restrictive every year. They were talking about replacing human workers with automated systems, moving families to smaller living spaces, reducing our autonomy. We decided to prepare for the worst." Paul Chun led them through the facility. Zethkalar saw workshops where humans were building everything from furniture to electronic devices. There were schools where children were learning, medical facilities where doctors were treating patients, and recreational areas where people were relaxing after work. "This is a complete society," Zethkalar said. "It's our backup plan, Nina," Walker replied. "If the government decides to deport us or replace us with machines, we have somewhere to go. We can survive down here indefinitely." "How many people know about this?" "About 3,000. Maybe half the human population on Mars. The other half thinks we're just a social club for engineers." The tour continued through multiple levels of the underground facility. Zethkalar learned that the humans had built not just living spaces but complete infrastructure. They had power generation, water treatment, waste management, and communication systems. They had even established connections to the surface that allowed them to monitor government activities. "We're not planning to attack anyone," Paul Chun explained. "We're planning to disappear. If the government pushes too hard, we'll simply stop showing up for work. The entire Mars colony will shut down overnight." "That's impossible. The government would just send in military forces to find you," Nina Walker smiled. "Let them try. We know every tunnel, every pipe, every cable on this planet. We built most of them. They would spend years searching and never find us all." The demonstration of their capabilities came sooner than expected. 3 days after Zethkalar's tour, the colonial government announced new regulations that would require all human workers to relocate to smaller living quarters and accept reduced wages. The announcement was made at noon on a Tuesday. By noon on Wednesday, Mars had stopped working. Zethkalar watched from the government administrative center as the colony systems began failing one by one. The power grid developed problems. The water treatment facility had mysterious breakdowns. The transportation system experienced delays and cancellations. The mining operations reported equipment failures. "It's like the planet is falling apart," the colonial governor said to his staff. "Every system is having problems at the same time," but Zethkalar knew what was really happening. The humans weren't sabotaging the systems. They were simply no longer maintaining them, without human workers to keep things running. The colony was discovering how dependent it had become on human expertise. The situation escalated when the government sent security forces to arrest the resistance leaders. The forces found empty apartments and abandoned workplaces. The humans had vanished underground, leaving behind only automated systems that gradually failed as they ran out of maintenance. Where did they go? the governor demanded. We're tracking them, the security chief replied. They're using the old mining tunnels to move around. We'll find them. But they didn't find them. The security forces spent weeks searching the tunnel systems, but the humans stayed ahead of them. Every time the forces thought they had cornered the resistance, they found empty spaces and cold trails. The breakthrough came when communication specialist Sam Davis made contact with the government from an untraceable location. His message was simple. We're not hiding, we're waiting. When you're ready to negotiate, we'll be here. The government's response was to send more security forces and declare martial law. The resistance's response was Operation Red Storm. Zethkalar watched the operation unfold from his hotel room. At exactly midnight, 17 different locations across Mars experienced simultaneous incidents. Not attacks, incidents. Power substations had mysterious failures. Communication relays developed problems. Transportation hubs found their scheduling systems corrupted. Government buildings discovered their security systems had been compromised. The incidents were perfectly coordinated and completely nonviolent. No one was hurt, no property was destroyed, but the message was clear. The resistance could reach any target on Mars whenever they chose. How did they do it? The governor asked at the emergency meeting the next morning. We don't know, the security chief admitted. The incidents happened in 17 different locations simultaneously. They would have needed hundreds of people working in perfect coordination. Or, Zethkalar said, they would have needed people who already had access to those locations because they built and maintained them. The realization hit the colonial government like a physical blow. The resistance wasn't a group of rebels hiding in caves. It was the entire human workforce operating from a hidden base that they had spent years building. The humans weren't just fighting the government, they were demonstrating that they could make Mars uninhabitable for any authority that tried to control them. The siege lasted 3 more weeks. The government kept sending forces to find the resistance base, but the humans had advantages that made them nearly impossible to track. They knew the terrain better than anyone else. They had built their own infrastructure that was invisible to government sensors. Most importantly, they had prepared for this conflict for years. 4 years after the Martian underground incident, Commander Zethkalar found himself facing the most terrifying human soldiers he had ever encountered. His ship, the VSS Meridian, was on a routine patrol near Proxima Centauri when the attack came, but this was unlike any boarding action he had experienced in his long military career. The Proxima campaign had been raging for 8 months. Human colonies in the system had declared independence, and the Galactic Authority had sent a joint fleet to restore order. Zethkalar served as a tactical advisor aboard one of the patrol ships responsible for intercepting supply runs to the rebel colonies. The day started normally. The Meridian was investigating a distress signal from a cargo vessel that had reported engine problems. When they arrived at the coordinates, they found a human transport ship drifting in space, apparently disabled and asking for assistance. Standard procedure, Captain Vorth told his crew. Send a boarding party to check their situation and offer aid if needed. Zethkalar studied the tactical display. Something felt wrong about the situation, but he couldn't identify what bothered him. The human ship looked genuinely damaged, its power readings were low, and their distress signal matched standard emergency protocols. Captain, I recommend caution, Zethkalar said. Human tactics have been unpredictable throughout this campaign. It's a civilian transport, Commander. What could they possibly do to a military vessel? The answer came 20 minutes later. The first sign of trouble was when the ship's external sensors detected movement in the space around them. But the sensors showed nothing. Empty vacuum, cosmic radiation, the usual background noise of deep space. Yet something was moving out there. Contact. The sensor operator called out, multiple objects approaching the ship. What kind of objects? I don't know. They're too small to be ships, too large to be debris. They're moving under their own power, but I can't get a clear reading. Captain Vorth ordered the ship to battle stations, but it was already too late. The objects, whatever they were, had reached the hull. The ship shuddered as something impacted the outer airlock. "Hull breach in Section 7, the damage control officer reported. "No, wait, someone's opening the airlock from outside." "That's, impossible. There's no atmosphere out there." "Sir, someone is definitely cycling the airlock. They're coming aboard." Zethkalar grabbed his weapon and headed for Section 7 with the ship's security team. What he found there changed his understanding of what humans were capable of becoming. The airlock opened to reveal 5 figures in what looked like modified spacesuits. But as they moved into the ship, Zethkalar realized these weren't normal suits. They were too form-fitting, too flexible, and they seemed to be integrated with the humans wearing them. The leader removed her helmet, revealing a woman with short, dark hair and cybernetic implants around her eyes. "I'm Sergeant Danny Kim, Human Voidwalker Corps. This ship is now under our control." "Voidwalker Corps?" Zethkalar stared at the humans. Their suits weren't just life support systems. They were part of their bodies, with tubes and cables that connected directly to their skin. "What have you done to yourselves?" "We've adapted," another voice said. A man stepped forward, his suit retracting to reveal extensive modifications to his arms and chest. "I'm Corporal Maria Santos. We're what humans become when we decide that space is just another environment to master." The security team opened fire, but the Voidwalkers moved with impossible speed and coordination. They flowed through the corridors like they were swimming through water instead of walking through air. Their modified bodies allowed them to change direction instantly, climb walls, and move in ways that normal humans couldn't manage. "How are you moving like that?" Zethkalar demanded as the security team fell back. "Magnetic field manipulation?" Sergeant Kim explained while her team secured the corridor. "Our suits can interact with the ship's metal structure. We can walk on any surface, move in any direction. In space, we use micro-thrusters and electromagnetic grapples." "But you were outside in vacuum. How did you survive?" "We don't just survive in vacuum," Corporal Santos said. "We live there. Our bodies have been modified to process oxygen more efficiently, handle pressure changes, and resist radiation. We can operate in hard vacuum for up to 8 hours without external life support." The boarding action continued through the ship. Zethkalar watched in horror as the Voidwalkers demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate basic biology. They moved through areas where the atmosphere had been vented, fought in zero gravity as easily as in normal gravity, and used the ship's own structure as weapons and tools. The most disturbing moment came when one of the Voidwalkers was hit by weapons fire that should have been fatal. The man's suit was breached, exposing him to vacuum, but he continued fighting. His modified biology allowed him to function in conditions that would kill any other known species within seconds. "You've turned yourselves into machines," Zethkalar said when the ship was finally secured. "We've turned ourselves into something better," Sergeant Kim replied. "Humans who can live anywhere, fight anywhere, survive anything." The ship's life support failed an hour later. A weapons hit had damaged the atmospheric processors, and the air was slowly leaking into space. For any normal crew, this would have been a death sentence. The ship would become uninhabitable within minutes. The Voidwalkers didn't even seem to notice. Zethkalar found himself in the ship's medical bay with Dr. Grace Thompson, the Voidwalkers' medic. She was working on treating wounded crew members while wearing a suit that allowed her to breathe vacuum as easily as atmosphere. "How long can you survive like this?" Zethkalar asked. "Like what? In vacuum? As long as our suits have power? In combat? Depends on the enemy? In space? Indefinitely? But you're still human." Dr. Thompson looked at him with eyes that had been replaced with cybernetic implants that could see across multiple spectrums. "We're human. We're just human that decided we didn't want to be limited by biology." The Voidwalkers continued their mission for 6 hours after the ship's life support failed. They secured the vessel, gathered intelligence from the computer systems, and prepared to transfer their prisoners to their own ships, all while operating in hard vacuum that would have killed any other species in minutes. "This is impossible," Captain Vorth gasped through his emergency breathing mask. No one can survive in space for this long. Humans can, Sergeant Kim said. We've been doing it for 3 years now. The Void Walker Corps was created specifically for deep space operations. We go where normal soldiers can't go, fight where normal soldiers can't fight, survive where normal soldiers can't survive. What's the point? Why modify yourselves so drastically? Because space is the ultimate battlefield, Corporal Santos explained. Most species treat vacuum as an obstacle to overcome. We treat it as home field advantage. The rescue came when Zethkalar least expected it. The ship's emergency beacon had been broadcasting for hours, but he assumed no help would come in time. Instead, a human medical ship arrived and docked with the damaged vessel. Dr. Grace Thompson worked alongside the rescue team to evacuate the surviving crew members. What amazed Zethkalar was how she treated everyone with the same professional care, regardless of species. She had spent hours fighting them, but now she was working to save their lives. Why? Zethkalar asked as she treated his injuries. Because that's what medics do, she said simply. Human, alien, enemy, friend, injured. Is injured. Even after we tried to kill you? You weren't trying to kill me personally. You were doing your job, and I was doing mine. Now my job is to keep you alive. As the medical ship prepared to transfer him to a hospital station, Zethkalar looked back at the Void Walkers one last time. They were preparing to abandon the damaged ship, moving through the vacuum-filled corridors as easily as walking through air. Commander, Sergeant Kim said over the radio, I want you to understand something. We didn't become Void Walkers to be better killers. We became Void Walkers to be better survivors. Space is hostile to life, but humans refuse to let hostility stop us. You've changed yourselves into something inhuman. No, we've changed ourselves into something more human. We've taken the basic human drive to adapt and survive and pushed it to its logical conclusion. We can live anywhere now, fight anywhere, survive anything. At what cost? At the cost of being limited by our biology? We gave up being normal humans so we could be unlimited humans. The medical ship departed, leaving the Void Walkers to continue their mission. Zethkalar spent the journey to the hospital thinking about what he had witnessed. The humans had not just adapted to the harsh environment of space. They had transformed themselves into creatures that could thrive in conditions that were lethal to every other known species. In his medical report, he wrote, The human Void Walkers represent the ultimate expression of human adaptability. They have willingly modified their own biology to survive in the most hostile environment in the galaxy. They are no longer limited by atmosphere, gravity, or pressure. They have made space itself into their natural habitat. 3 years after his encounter with the Void Walkers, Commander Zethkalar stood before the most important gathering in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had convened an emergency session at Arcturus Station to address what they called the human problem. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, all waiting to hear his testimony about humanity's military capabilities. Zethkalar looked out at the assembled delegates and felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. What he said today would determine how the galaxy dealt with humanity for generations to come. His words could lead to war or peace, cooperation or conflict. The council speaker, an ancient being from the ethereal collective, called the session to order. Commander Zethkalar of the Vaxion Republic, you have been called to provide testimony regarding your experiences with human military forces. The council has read your reports, but we require clarification on several matters. I am ready to answer your questions, Zethkalar replied. The first question came from the Draknari representative, a tall creature with scaled skin and multiple eyes. Commander, your reports describe humans as unusually dangerous in combat. Please explain why you consider them more threatening than other species. Zethkalar had prepared for this question, but finding the right words was still difficult. Honorable delegates, humans do not fight the way other species fight. Most of us have rules, traditions, and limitations that guide our military actions. Humans have only one rule: win. Surely that's an oversimplification, the Centauri delegate interjected. All species want to win conflicts. No, you misunderstand. Other species want to win within acceptable parameters. We fight to achieve victory while maintaining our honor, protecting our traditions, or following established protocols. Humans fight to win at any cost. They will sacrifice anything, change anything, or break any rule if it helps them survive. The speaker gestured for him to continue. Please provide specific examples. Zethkalar activated the holographic display and showed images from Kepler Station. At their first colony, I watched humans turn mining equipment into weapons of war. They didn't just use what they had, they improved it, modified it, and made it more dangerous than its original designers ever intended. The display changed to show footage from New Sarajevo. During a 6-month siege, I watched humans eat their own clothing rather than surrender. They survived conditions that would have broken any other species, not because they were physically stronger, but because they refused to accept defeat. These examples show determination, the Accorid representative said. Determination is not the same as danger. You're correct. Determination alone is not dangerous. But human determination combined with human creativity creates something unprecedented. The display shifted to show the Phantom Fleet. I have seen humans build functional warships from the discarded wreckage of alien battles. They took our old technology and made it better than the original designs. A murmur ran through the chamber. The idea that humans could improve upon established alien technology was disturbing to many delegates. The vegan representative stood up. Commander, these incidents occurred during specific conflicts. Surely humans cannot maintain such intensity indefinitely. That brings me to Mars, Zethkalar said. The display showed images of the underground city. I discovered that humans had spent 5 years secretly building an entire civilization beneath the planet's surface. They did this while continuing their normal lives, working their regular jobs, and raising their families. They prepared for a war that might never come simply because preparation gave them an advantage. The underground city is impressive. The speaker acknowledged, but it's a defensive structure. How does this make humans more dangerous? Because it proves they think generations ahead. Most species plan for the conflicts they can see coming. Humans plan for conflicts that might happen someday. They prepare for wars that don't exist yet, against enemies they haven't identified, using strategies they're still developing. The display changed again, showing footage from his encounter with the Void Walkers. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they watched humans moving through hard vacuum as easily as walking through air. This is the most disturbing example, Zethkalar said. Humans who decided that biology was a limitation to overcome. They modified their own bodies to survive in environments that are lethal to every other known species. They didn't just adapt to space, they made space their natural habitat. The chamber fell silent. The image of humans who could live and fight in vacuum represented a level of adaptation that few species could comprehend. The crystalline delegate, whose species communicated through harmonic vibrations, asked the next question. Commander, if humans are so dangerous, why aren't they conquering the galaxy? Because that's not what they want, Zethkalar replied. This is what makes them truly terrifying. They don't fight for conquest or glory or resources. They fight for survival, for freedom, for the right to exist on their own terms. You can negotiate with someone who wants territory or wealth. You cannot negotiate with someone who is fighting for their right to exist. What do you recommend? The speaker asked. Zethkalar had spent months preparing his answer to this question. Honorable delegates, I have fought alongside humans and against them. I have seen them at their most dangerous and their most compassionate. I have watched them create weapons of war from scrap metal and save the lives of their enemies using advanced medicine. He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The question we keep asking is whether we can defeat humanity in a war. But that's the wrong question. The right question is whether we can survive without them. Explain, the speaker commanded. Humans don't just fight wars, they solve problems. Every challenge I've seen them face, they've found a way to overcome. They've shown that they can adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle, and turn any disadvantage into an advantage. They've proven that they can survive anything. The display showed images from all of his encounters with humans. The galaxy faces threats that we cannot handle with traditional thinking. Climate disasters, resource shortages, technological challenges, and conflicts that require new approaches. Humans excel at finding new approaches. You're suggesting we need them? The Draknari representative asked. I'm suggesting that they're going to be part of our future whether we want them to be or not. The question is whether they'll be our partners or our problems. The Aquarid representative raised a concern. But if they're as dangerous as you claim, how can we trust them? Zethkalar thought about Dr. Grace Thompson treating his injuries after fighting against her. Because I've seen their compassion alongside their capability. Yes, they're the most dangerous warriors I've ever encountered. But they're also the most merciful. They'll fight to the death to protect what they believe in, but they'll also risk their lives to save their enemies. What do you propose? The speaker asked. Partnership, Zithkalar said simply. Not control, not containment, but genuine cooperation. Humans become more dangerous when they're threatened or restricted. They become more valuable when they're included and respected. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates wanted to impose restrictions on human expansion. Others suggested military action to prevent humans from becoming too powerful. A few proposed complete isolation, cutting off all contact with human space. Zethkalar listened to the arguments with growing concern. The delegates were making the same mistake that every authority had made when dealing with humans. They were trying to control something that could not be controlled. Finally, the speaker called for his concluding statement. Zethkalar stood and looked around the chamber one last time. Honorable delegates, I have spent years studying human warfare, and I've learned something that none of my reports captured. Humans don't just fight to win, they fight to survive. And they've survived everything the galaxy has thrown at them so far. Every species they've encountered has tried to limit them, control them, or defeat them. Every time, the humans have found a way to overcome those limitations and emerge stronger than before. They've turned sieges into victories, transformed scrap metal into warships, built civilizations underground, and made space itself into their home. If we try to restrict them, they'll find ways around our restrictions. If we try to defeat them, they'll find ways to defeat us. If we try to ignore them, they'll find ways to make themselves impossible to ignore. But if we work with them, if we include them as partners in building the galaxy's future, then their creativity becomes our advantage, their adaptability becomes our strength, and their determination becomes our hope. The choice is simple. We can spend our energy fighting humanity, or we can spend it working with them. But make no mistake, humanity will survive either choice. The question is whether the rest of us will. The vote was close, but the council decided on partnership rather than conflict. Trade agreements were established, diplomatic relations were opened, and humans were invited to participate in galactic governance.